being able to actually see someone who looks like you on television and being able to relate to that is so important. I do kind of enjoy where like their sexuality isn't the main focus, because it kind of neglects and takes away all the other attributes and the great things that they can provide as a character. Ladies, gentlemen, and non-gender conforming people, how are we? I hope you're well. I hope you're safe. I hope you're queer or an ally. I wanted to do this chat for ages, but it's just one of those things where like I really wanted to get it right. But then like as I'm like learning and evolving, I kind of gross. I kind of came to the realization that like I was never going to be able to cover everything. So I thought, you know what, let me just try and do it from what I know and we'll go from there. And if someone resonates with me, that is fantastic. My name is Jord. This is the Winning Side podcast. Thank you for joining me. And this is all about queer representation in the media. I think this is such an important conversation. I think this is really pivotal to the culture. I think it is something which may be the only level of comfort and relatability for a lot of queer people. I don't really know how to start this, to be honest with you, because in my head I'm thinking, do I go back to where I first found queer representation, or do I like try and go back as far as I can remember, or do I like try and like look back like even further? And I think I want to do that. So like from what I can remember, and I have a few examples but not a lot, because a lot of them just didn't make sense to me, to be honest. They weren't really resonating with me. And I think it's been really interesting to see a shift. I'm 26 years old and I feel like I'm almost in the perfect era where I'm able to enjoy queer liberation and joy as someone who is young, but I've also been able to see the transition and the shift. You know, I've been able to see the transition of where queer people have become main characters, you know, and have become like the main people on the casting list. You know, that's been a really exciting thing to see, for sure. You know, I think there's nothing more wholesome and good for your mental stability than seeing people that look like you and are like you on your screen. You know, there's a feeling of relatability, which when you are marginalized is really important to hold on to. I've spent such a long time being fed content which I couldn't relate to, or it would be like on a really, do you know, and this is actually quite interesting, and this is obviously going a bit off topic, but it's a bit how like I remember really well how a lot of the stuff that I liked was on really late. So like obviously you have like kid channels, yeah, and I remember I used to love a show called Little Bill, right? I think the kid channels, they stop at like 5 to 7, between 5 and 7 or so. No, it can't be as early as 5, maybe 7 or 8. And I remember Little Bill would always be the last thing on TV. Same with Disney Channel. That's So Raven would always be the last thing on TV, because they don't want to put marginalized people in daytime TV, or they didn't want to. But yeah, I think, because for the most part, I think if we were to roll it back for a bit, the first representation which I can really think of, and I wouldn't say this relates to me, but for queer people, is probably Carol from Friends. Carol from Friends is the first person, and Friends was a really interesting one. Friends was a really interesting example, because what Friends did this thing where like a lot of characters would be flamboyant and somewhat promiscuous, but they would never be claimed as gay. And I think that was what they were kind of initiating. And it was kind of promoting that idea that like gay characters are quite sexual, they're quite forward thinking, and they're quite extreme, which is such a stupid, outdated stereotype, which just never made sense. You get, it's the same with any like sexual orientation group. You know, you get people that are like that and people that aren't. Like, most of my friends aren't, but what does that mean? But I remember Friends always being like a really good example, and like obviously people think Chandler's gay. Chandler and like men would approach. I'm gonna try really hard to find like a clip or a snippet, but like men would approach Chandler thinking he was gay, and they were very like these characters were always like very like moving pretty mad, you know? And I just think it kind of creates this really unfair depiction about the way that gay men in particular are presented as these like sexual predators who are very persistent, who aren't willing to take no for an answer, who are very consistent. And I just think like when you see those negative portrayals and those negative images of your community on TV, you can't help but feel a certain way, and it makes you kind of question your own self and your doubts. Like, oh well, should I be like that? You know. And I think that's why it's really important when it comes to representation to have a range of different people from different groups, you know, like different black people, different queer people, different women, different men, because if we have this narrow, fixated, outdated viewpoint of what queer people are supposed to look like, it's so damaging. It's so damaging, man. It just isn't good. But I want to talk about my own experience. So like probably when I first resonated with queer representation, I think, if I'm being honest, the first bit of queer representation which I really messed with was Glee. Glee was for all of its wrongs, for all of its rights and wrongs, Glee was very ahead of its time. You know, Glee gave me hope that queer characters could be their true selves and thrive. Glee taught me that you don't have to pattern down the way in which you behave, and you can love someone unconditionally and you won't be judged for that for the most part. And it taught me that you can be queer and have friends, which sounds really lame, but it really taught me that you could be queer and have friends. I remember because Glee, I don't know if this is the case now because I don't really watch much TV, but like before streaming services, there was a thing where like you wouldn't be able to, well, no, if something was in the States and got aired, you would see it like 6 months later. I remember Glee used to be on at like, what channel was it? Yeah, E4. Yeah, E4. I remember, so Glee used to be on E4 on a Monday night. And I remember I was closeted. And I remember Glee was my comfort. I think Glee actually saved my life, to be honest, which is quite deep. I think Glee actually saved my life. Because I just remember thinking, I thought Kurt is so unapologetically himself. You know, he's so fun, he's so vibrant, and he's so queer. He's so queer, and he's loved. He's so loved for being queer. And I remember thinking, obviously there were some parts where like he was treated really badly, like where he would get slushies thrown at him. And then he had that really horrible bully that turned out to be gay as well. That was a real shock, wasn't it? That was unexpected. But like, and the Glee Club was like a place where you wouldn't be judged, you know? And I remember thinking, this is like pretty mesmerizing. I remember the scene where Kurt comes out to his dad, and his dad's quite a macho man. I think he's a mechanic. He's very like stereotypically masculine. It's just been Kurt and his dad for a long time since Kurt lost his mum, and it's like because Kurt's very flamboyant, very camp, and he comes out to his dad, and his dad is just like, "I've known since you were 3 years old," you know, and it was so sweet and joyful and playful. And it really, because Glee, like I said, Glee was ahead of its time, and that was a time where like we were kind of like having the shift, and there wasn't that much queer representation on TV. There was minimal. And I think Chris did a great job of portraying Kurt, and it kind of like portrayed that idea and communicated that image that like parents can be on your side, you know, parents can support you regardless. And yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was, I thought it was such a crucial moment to be like, oh my God, like this is really important. And that happens a lot in Glee. I'm not going to big up Glee for the whole chat, but like for a bit. And like we had Santana, who Naya Rivara, who was one of the first lesbian POC characters on daytime television, you know. And I think it's about, and it was kind of a time where it was about having to do like the first, breaking the barrier for the first of everything to then make it the second and third, and then to continue to normalize it. Another one, kind of the similar time frame as Glee. Another show which I thought was great at showing queer representation ahead of its time was Ugly Betty. Ugly Betty was, and it's so interesting because I would love to know, was it always in the plan to portray Justin as gay? I've always wanted to know that, because obviously the actor Mark is a gay man, and I've always thought to myself, was that always the intention? Was that always the case? But yeah, again, and then Justin. I think not so much now, but I think at the time I really related to Justin. Justin was allowed to be himself in his family home, you know. His mother, his mum, and his granddad, they all embraced his differences, and there was never like a moment of like doubt or like having to think twice about letting him do what he wanted to do. And I think that is true love. I think you see queer people that become quite what's the word? I don't know what the word is, like, but like, oh my God, I can't think of the word. That's really going to annoy me. But like, they feel a certain type of way towards their family because they wouldn't allow them to do certain things, or they wouldn't allow them to enjoy certain things because it's supposedly not suited for that person. For example, so Justin's obviously really into fashion. Fashion is very female dominated, right? Really into fashion and really into like feminine stuff. I think fashion for the most part, though. Betty works at Mode. She works at Mode magazine. Hilda's into hair. I couldn't tell you what the granddad does. I couldn't tell you what he does. But beside the point, I digress. All three of them like love him unconditionally, you know? And I just think that's so important, to be allowed to flourish as a young queer person who's trying to navigate it, being allowed to flourish and being allowed to dive into your creative ideas without disruption or doubt or trying to neglect that, you know? Because I do think for people who have had those situations where their family members have made them switch a certain way or like make them have different interests, you will become like, oh my God, what is the word? Not reluctant, not resistant. That's really going to annoy me. I have to Google it, sorry. But you become like disconnected from somebody, you know? You naturally like, we all like different things. And I think for you to be neglected and to have that taken away from you because it doesn't fit into the norm is just really stupid. And I remember when Justin was going to come out or did come out or whatever, and I remember the like, nobody was like, oh, what the hell, oh my God, like no one was like that. Everyone, like, the initial response was to have a party for him, and I just thought that was so beautiful. I thought, and it's so interesting because Hilda's really shocked, and I'm thinking, is it really that shocking? But I think that really paved the way. I think that paved the way for like normalization of queerness in American television, you know? And I just thought, it doesn't have to always, and the thing is, right, when it comes to like coming out on shows and stuff, it doesn't have to always be like dramatic and negative and like traumatic. Sometimes it can be really smooth sailing and really pleasant and really happy. I remember, because obviously Mark is also a gay man who's an ugly Betty, and Mark is another character who I absolutely adore. Mark was so carefree and so, again, so just didn't give a because Mark's mum doesn't realize that he's gay, and Mark pretends that Betty is his girlfriend, and I think the mum actually knows, because Mark goes to tell her, and then she's like, I don't want to hear it. And I just think, because it really proves that sometimes you can be like the most flamboyant and like really embracing your true self, but that doesn't mean that everyone around you is going to, and that must be really hard to navigate. I've never had apart from like grandparents, I've never really had the unfortune of having relatives who have like had an issue. I've been very, very lucky. My mum is the goat. My dad is the goat. My brother is the goat. My parents and my brother are wonderful. I can't complain. But no, I think as we progress, those two shows definitely helped me the most. They definitely shaped me the most. And there were other ones as well which I really enjoyed. Like American Horror Story is a really important mention. I think Ryan Murphy has always been very good at like presenting like queerness from a lot of different avenues, which I think is fantastic. American Horror Story was a really good one. I've never seen it, but Orange is the New Black seems to be a good one, particularly for lesbians. I think that was a really groundbreaking show, which debuted in a time when we didn't really see like same-sex relations for females as prominent as it was. I don't have the knowledge on the show, so I can't talk about it that much really, but I thought that was really great. And I think as time went on into like the late like 2000 teens, so like I don't know, like say like 2015, 16, whatever, there became like a very heavy shift. There became like a very heavy shift with a lot more queerness very presented. And I'm really, do you know what it is? I'm really enjoying how coming out isn't always a thing. Like I feel like queer characters are so significant and so important, but like I think it's really crucial to remember there is more to a queer person's character than their sexual orientation. And I do kind of enjoy where like their sexuality isn't the main focus, because it kind of neglects and takes away all the other attributes and the great things that they can provide as a character. Like there was a really good show that I watched recently that's been cancelled after the first season, which is really annoying. It's called Everything Now. It was about this girl called Mia who'd been in trigger warning, who'd been in an eating disorder for X amount of months. Mia, I think she's bisexual, I believe, and it never gets discussed really. And you just see how she just like has a crush on this guy, dates a girl, and there's never any like, oh my god. Even like, has anyone seen Heartbreak High? Heartbreak High is a very good show. I honestly think Heartbreak High is the best Gen Z representation I've ever seen. And I think because they're just not as cringy as the English and the Americans. And I even remember when like Cash and Darren start dating, and like they just, because I think it'll like seems to like spark when Darren does that dance at that show and Cash is just completely like, oh, okay, what are you saying? And even then, there's never like a dramatic or like a coming out for Cash. It's just like, yeah, I'm with Darren. And what? I'm very much for it. I'm very much for it. And there has been a rise. There definitely has been a rise in queer representation. But it's really important, like I said before, to ensure these characters have a storyline that isn't focused on their queerness. Unraveling queerness and discussing it and having those conversations are really important, but we need to give them more credit where due, and to like make sure that like it's not just about them being queer, And that kind of leads on to the question, like, queer representation, is it important? I think queer representation is so important. Queer representation has actually probably saved me, to be perfectly honest. And it's so interesting because like straight people will be very much like, oh, like it's going to brainwash my child, it's going to turn my child gay, like there's too much exposure on television, on film. But the thing is though, I've been exposed to so much straight crap for the last 26 years. And am I straight? No. I think a lot of people see queerness as a threat. I think because queer people are so capable and so creative and so able to do and accomplish so much, I think a lot of straight people are fearful that queer people could actually be at the top. Queer people could actually like be in a higher position financially, socially, and economically. And I think that's where the insecurity comes from. I don't think it's about the issue about being exposed to like two men or two women or two non-binary people kissing on television. I think it's more the fact that like if we continue to grow, which we will do so until we get to an equal point, hopefully, I think, yeah, straight people see that are fearful of that. You know, the traditional significance of a straight white man is decreasing significantly. So, what are you going to do? Enjoying as well how there's like different levels of queerness, because I think for the most part for a long time it was very much just like gay men, gay like gay white men, and this is great for the gay white men. And like it got, like I said, with like obviously I like I said previously, like obviously I loved having Mark, growing up with Mark and Kurt and Justin, but I can't fully relate to them. Do you know what I mean? Like I can't fully relate to them, but like at that point to have a gay person or queer person at all was pretty substantial and magnificent. So I'll take what I can get. But I think obviously having these different levels of queerness is really important. So that for, and obviously like stereotypically, like I said on my last episode, gay men are portrayed as feminine and flamboyant, you know, and that isn't the case for every gay person. Some gay people are naturally very masculine, you know, and I think having those representations of masculine gay men will allow masculine gay people to come out and to feel more safer. And also bisexuality. I feel like bi erasure is like a massive thing. And like I feel like sometimes in our community the gays can sometimes neglect bisexuality, and I find it really infuriating because like they are a real significant part, you know? And I feel like they're not really given the same forefront that gay men are, you know? And I just think to myself, like, we're a community, we're a supposedly welcoming community, but there seem to be some like subcultures which get more prioritized than others. And I just think the whole like concept is a bit weird, you know? But like I'm seeing a lot of bi representation, which is really good. I mean, I think the obvious one is Kit Connor playing Nick Nelson. There's also, has anyone seen Atypical? Atypical's a really good show. I strongly recommend that. It's about this boy that is neurodivergent and his sister is a queer woman, which is really cool. Euphoria is really good for that. I don't know if Rue is. I don't know if she's meant to be like queer, lesbian, or bisexual. But Jules is a bisexual woman, a bisexual trans woman, which is really cool. I think yeah, Hunter, she's incredible, very talented girl, very very talented. But also, I think one thing that I really need is black queer representation. I am a half black man. I need black queer representation like desperately. And I think, what I noticed is for a very long time, black queer men or black queer people, sorry, aren't the main characters. We've only really presented black queerness properly in the last, how would I word it? In the last 5 years, you know, because I remember thinking like representation for any queer person is great and so important, but where are the black people? Where are the black people? And I remember thinking like, I can't relate to this, you know. And the black queer experience is so different to the white. I mean, I wouldn't know because I'm not white, but like from what I've been told, the black queer experience is so different to the white one. You know, we sometimes happen, not always, because there can be white culture too, but like we usually have the complication of like religion and culture as well. And I really thought it was important to be able to see those stories and to see those narratives. So when you're not getting those stories and narratives, it's like, for sake, like, well, what now? And I think that's why I really adore Shuti Gatwa. I remember seeing Eric for the first time, right, and I thought, this is. I feel so heard and I feel so seen. I'm seeing a black man, a black queer man who's so unapologetically queer and so unapologetically himself, yet he has friends. He's adored by his friends. He has a loving family and he has faith. He's a man of God. And I just thought that was, sex education was so groundbreaking. And I think Shuti did such a good job because we don't get to see black queer people thrive a lot of the time. A lot of the conversations and stories surrounding black queer people is about trauma. And obviously that is a very crucial part of the experience for a lot of people. But sometimes when you're watching TV, you just want to switch off. You just want to switch off and just ignore the world for a bit. And I think Eric was a really amazing safe space I really needed in that time, you know? Yeah. So, and I think that's my main critique. There's a lot of growing like queer representation, but like there's not enough black. And even for Wicked, for example, like obviously, like I adore Cynthia. I think she's incredible, and that was a real groundbreaking shift for Cynthia Erivo to be a very queer out black woman who is the main character. Obviously, I love Ariana Grande. Do not get it twisted, but she wasn't the main character. Cynthia was the main character, you know? And how, like, even in the film itself, Wicked, like, indicates, like, queerness, you know? And I think that's so important. Like, I can't even imagine how much more sane growing up would have been with queer representation. It's so significant and we shouldn't downplay it. Like having black queer representation changes everything. And I feel like people like frown because it's a very ongoing important conversation at the moment, but it saves lives. Being able to actually see someone who looks like you on television and being able to relate to that is so important, especially when you're black and queer, you know? That's why having people like Shuti Gatwa are so important. Having people like Cynthia Erivo are so important because we feel heard and we feel seen, you know? And I don't know. I'm excited to see it continue to grow and to get bigger and better, you know? I just think if I'm getting this like sensation and this fulfillment and satisfaction from these minimal characters alone, imagine getting to a place and position where like it's even bigger. You know, Pose is also a really good one. Pose is very good at black queer representation, particularly black trans representation as well. I don't think I've ever seen a show with so much trans beauty and joy. But yeah, in this current time, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be in a time where I can see change, significant change. It's not enough for my liking. However, it's moving. It's moving. Not as quick as I want it to, but it's still moving. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for what we have. I'm grateful for what I've had, even though it may not always be the highest level of relatability. I'm grateful that I had Ugly Betty and Glee growing up. I'm grateful now that I have Sex Education and Heartbreak High and Euphoria and Heartstopper. And I'm just like, I'm optimistic. I'm really optimistic. And it's only going to get bigger and better. And then I can make another review. So, real sweet. Cool. Don't think I have anything else to say. Ladies and gentlemen, and those who do not identify with either, my name is Jord Hellwood. This is the Winning Side podcast. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and give me a 5-star rating on Spotify. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. I love talking to myself. Actually, like, really helps my sanity. I will see you soon. I love you guys. Take care.